And on both counts, this is a shocking period to, I mean, let's say on the question of aims and goals, this is shocking. We can't even piece together, as hard as we try, exactly why we're in this war. This seems really to be a war of whim. That's the best description that I've heard of it. And when it comes to American power, the debate is open, and the days will tell what the real situation is. But at least to this moment, the American and Israeli claim of shock and awe overwhelming the Iranian government is not true. And quite the contrary, it seems that there's a lot of worry, in fact, beneath the surface, that the ability to defend against especially the Iranian missile attacks is waning, and in the Gulf region almost non-existent. So this is why the whole world is watching this in amazement. We are seeing fundamental things play out, and they're also extremely dangerous. They can escalate to nuclear war without question. On the one side, on the side of Israel, I would say the level of violence, dehumanization of Israel's foes, the biblical language, which in this case of the Bible, the Old Testament story of the Israelite capture of their promised land, is so ruthless, so violent, so genocidal, that the rhetoric and mindset coming from Israel suggests no limits. That seems to be not just tactical. That seems to be actually ideological. The hatred for the other in Israel seems to be unbounded. And a difference of the U.S. and Israel is that in the United States, the public opposes the war quite overwhelmingly. And nothing that Trump has done has changed that. And this unease and opposition is very widespread. In Israel, I'm sorry to say, it seems that most of the public backs the war and backs the violence and backs the idea behind the war of the hatred of the other side and the belief that the other side is an implacable foe that must be totally annihilated, which again is maybe 9th century BC mentality, but it seems to be infused in the society.
Well, a common friend of ours, John Mersheimer, he keeps making the point that no one has told him any story of how this could end in a positive way, that is in a U.S. victory. And it's a good point. I just find it difficult to see what the best possible outcome is. The whole idea that if there's just enough death, destruction, and carnage, then somehow the Iranians would simply capitulate. It seems like part of the problem with this strategy, though, is that what the U.S. demands of Iran is the capitulation would then become an existential threat. If they would have to give up even their conventional deterrent, what would stop the destruction of Iran? And there seems to be some parallels to the war, or the proxy war against Russia. That is, if we just escalate enough, then we'll get a deal. But when your adversary considers this to be an existential threat, there is no bowing down. It's only escalation. So do you see any possible end to this war? Or how can this be ended? Because at the moment, it doesn't seem that Trump is willing to pack up and go home.
Well, I think that this is the point, the difference of can and will. Of course, Donald Trump can and should pack up and go home, but it's very unlikely to happen. And the backdrop of all of this is the continued American assertion of hegemony. That's not only Trump. That is the dominant American foreign policy idea that America must be and is the most powerful country in the world in every region, and must constantly prove that or demonstrate that if there are any doubts. So a war in Iran is not about Iranian issues. A war in Iran is about demonstrating America's full and unconstrained power, and it must be proved to the whole world that it is full and unconstrained. That's the backdrop. That goes beyond the question of Trump. But on top of that problem, which is the assertion of hegemony, which is a claim that the U.S. believes in and makes, but cannot fulfill, because the U.S. doesn't have the predominant power to do that, other than in utter destruction. There is the personality of Donald Trump. And personalities make a difference in wars. Wartime leaders make a difference. And the more we understand the situation in the U.S., the more the personality factor plays in. You know, we can give structural reasons for the American demands on hegemony. This is something that goes back decades. We can also talk about financial motivations and the pressures, or not even pressures, I should say, the lobbying and the money-making from the war profiteers. There's no doubt that a lot of Silicon Valley, Palantir being case number one, is a great proponent of these wars. By the way, just parenthetically, they want to test their new AI-driven weapon system. So this is also, for them, experimentation, it's lab work. The fact that people are killed and there's a war, all the better. It's very realistic. We can see how these weapons work. There's a certain madness, greed, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars driving this. Same is true in Israel. So there's a side of this that is very direct. But I was saying that even with all of those structural features, the claims of hegemony, the size of the military-industrial complex, the huge money-making and grift that goes into this, the personal grift of Donald Trump and his family, who are the most corrupt officials in U.S. history. I mean, corrupt family and president in U.S. history.
播报新闻是我的日常，必须时刻保持妆容和皮肤的最佳状态。当来到人生中最重要的时刻，也是 KS 逆时奇迹帮助我轻松驾驭，闪闪发光。KS 逆时奇迹活肤露全效精华、精华霜，多达5种 EGF 6大冻龄关键成分，保湿效果让我非常满意，小细纹也不再困扰我。我就是我自己的最佳女主角 ，KS 让我从容自信，光彩动人。我是我人生中的大女主。我的最爱，我做主。KS 逆时奇迹系列热卖中，下单请上快点购，透过中天新闻网 App 下单立减50，或输入 CTI 推荐码有额外折扣。